to Nice Radio every Saturday at 7:30 a.m. for A View from the Outside, hosted by Brereton Horne. A View from the Outside takes a look at key issues affecting St. Vincent and the Grenadines and gives a global perspective on how these issues are viewed. Host Brereton Horne will examine a variety of topics to enlighten, stimulate debate, and explore solutions. Hear the facts, hear the real-life stories, hear A View from the Outside. Join Brereton Horne at 7:30 a.m. every Saturday on Nice Radio for A View from the Outside.
On A View from the Outside this week being the 2nd of May 2020, we look at disappointed. disappointed, disappointed, with the view being that due to ineptitude, the thrust to govern by fear, and undesirable governance, thousands of Vincentians are left disappointed. The Cambridge Dictionary defines disappointed as unhappy because someone or something was not as good as you hoped or expected, or because something did not happen. That definition tells us that disappointed people are unhappy. Disappointed people have their hopes or expectations dashed. And when people are disappointed, they expect something to happen, and it didn't happen. Yesterday, 1st of May 2020, was Labor Day in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, as it was in many countries around the world. And as we know, Labor Day is celebrated around the world to observe and honor the achievements of workers. It is historically the day when labor movements or labor unions spur and garner their members into celebrating their achievements. In addition to celebrating their achievements, it is a day when labor unions renew their pledge to stand up against unjust working conditions and demand better pay, reasonable working hours, and obtain workable collective agreements, among other things. Unfortunately, since the advent of the current regime in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Labor Day appears to have lost its true meaning, and because of that, there are many who are disappointed. We, on A View from the Outside, are fully aware of the obstacles and challenges which the coronavirus, COVID-19, has caused on May Day celebrations this year. However, many have become disappointed with the low-key nature of the celebrations since the advent of this regime. Within the last decade and a half, that day, Labor Day, has passed without much or any fanfare for workers. The significance and meaning of Labor Day in St. Vincent and the Grenadines has been lost on many, and many Vincentians are left disappointed. Many are disappointed because they believe that most of the union leaders have now become puppets of the regime. And because of that, the unions are weakened significantly and appear to no longer stand up for their workers. Many have seen how the regime treats the unions, or some unions, and their representatives with scant regard and total disrespect. Many have seen how the regime reneged on the collective agreement with the teachers union, and how they remarkably and unjustifiably, according to the Eastern Caribbean Supreme Court of Appeal, punished Kenroy Johnson, Elvis Daniel, and Addison Bash Thomas. Many have seen how they unjustifiably and unlawfully treated Otto Sam when they transferred and finally dismissed him. Many have seen how they unlawfully denied promotion to public servants. Many have seen how they intimidate workers and try to drive fear into them. Those practices have left many totally disappointed in the regime and its leader. Yes, in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, there are many disappointed workers. The people of the country expected the regime to deliver on their glowing promises in respect of workers' rights. However, many are now left disappointed. The regime has not only caused disappointment to workers at home in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, it has, due to the severe restrictions on travel as a result of COVID-19, left many or hundreds of Vincentian sailors and other workers disappointed. They are stuck on cruise ships off the coast of Florida and elsewhere, unable to get home. Many say that the regime, especially its leader, promised much to these workers, but has to date delivered little or nothing. In their promise to bring the sailors home, they boast in the Parliament of St. Vincent and the Grenadines that these sailors are citizens of the country and that citizenship must count for something. Well, as it has turned out so far, that boast remains just that, a boast. The sailors and their expectant families are left disappointed. They are disappointed because they were promised that they will have been home on the 30th of April 2020. That date has obviously passed, and the sailors are still languishing on the ships in uncertainty. Many people, including the sailors, believe that they are treated as chattel or commodity to be traded off or bargained off by their government. They believe that the regime is putting cost over their lives, and for that, they are disappointed. They are disappointed because they believe that the emphasis on the regime appears to be one of wanting to make money or profit off them rather than getting them home safely and securing them when they get home. They are disappointed because they are aware that the leader of the regime has been referring to them as being dumped off by cruise liners. They question whether the leader of the regime actually sees them as nothing more than garbage to be dumped, and that has left them disappointed. They are disappointed because they expected that by now they would have been home. However, they are not. And they believe that stumbling blocks are put up by the regime, and those stumbling blocks have prevented them from being home. It is worthy to note that in addition to the sailors, there are many other workers, including some on oil rigs, who want to return home to St. Vincent and the Grenadines, but at present are not allowed or unable to do so. And for that, they are disappointed. In this time of COVID-19, many Vincentian students in various countries are left disappointed by the regime also. Those in Cuba are crying out for guidance and assistance from the regime, but it seems that their cries are falling on deaf ears. Many have said that they are discriminated against, especially during this period of COVID-19. They are left disappointed and cannot fathom why their government is not coming to their aid or rescue. Many Vincentian students in Jamaica are stuck also. They too are left disappointed. Some of them are unable to afford to pay the airfare to get home to St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Yet, they have been told that if and when they do get home, they are responsible to pay for their accommodation and upkeep to be quarantined for at least 14 days. Many of these students expect more assistance from their government at home, but sadly, that assistance is not forthcoming. And because of that, their disappointment is indescribable, especially knowing that millions of dollars have been donated to their government to assist with COVID-19 expenses. There are students in other countries in the world who expect more to happen from the regime in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. However, they too are left disappointed. We, here on A View from the Outside, could cite many more examples of those who are left disappointed by the regime. However, time does not permit. So we urge every single listener, we urge every one of you to try to remember other instances when the regime has left Vincentians disappointed. Remember, when they came into government in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, they came in on a promise of good governance. Remember the euphoria and the expectation of many who genuinely believed that St. Vincent and the Grenadines would have been a better place. It has not happened. Think about how disappointed you have become in them. Remember the exploitation of your sons and daughters who have to degrade themselves and do all sorts of immoral things on the promise of a job or a scholarship. Remember how they have destroyed Yogi Farrell and brought shame to the country. And think about how disappointed you are at the general breakdown of morality in the country. Remember how they denigrated the professional who identified and described the existence of a rape culture and a rape crisis in the country. Remember how it did not take long after their entrance into government for the trade unions in the country to be emasculated. Think about how the trade unions have been sapped of their power to truly represent their workers. Think about how disappointed that is. Remember your belief in their promise of being tough on crime and the causes of crime. And then think about how disappointed you are that crime has escalated out of control and has seemingly become normalized. Think about how they are ruling by fear and how disappointed you have become, especially now that you are afraid to speak out and you now have to rely on others to speak out on your behalf. Don't forget their blatant refusal to obey the Constitution, the highest law of the land in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. And they fail to obey the Constitution and provide financial accountability for the nation's purse. Don't forget the allegations of corruption leveled at them and about the allegations of them enriching themselves with millions stashed away in bank accounts overseas, while you struggle to keep afloat. Think about how disappointed you are at how they have systematically undermined and eroded the rule of law in the country. Think about how disappointed you are that the election petitions to determine the legitimacy of the government still languish in the courts nearly 5 years after those elections were held on the 9th of December 2015. Don't forget how you have had your hopes and expectations of this regime dashed on a host of things. And think about how disappointed you have become. Also, think about how disappointed you are at their handling of the pandemic COVID-19, the crisis created by the pandemic COVID-19. Think about the state of uncertainty in which Vincentians currently exist, hoping that things do not worsen in the country. We, on A View from the Outside, encourage you to keep thinking, keep remembering about how disappointed you are, and we encourage you to keep the discussion going. And as you do that, we implore you, each and every one of you, to bear in mind the words of the late U.S. civil rights activists who left hallmark in history, Rosa Parks. She said, "There is just so much hurt, disappointment, and oppression one can take." I'll just repeat that for effect. There is just so much hurt, disappointment, and oppression one can take. Vincentians, they have disappointed us all enough. Until next week, Randy and all of the listeners, this is Brereton Horne with A View from the Outside, with a reminder to send your feedback as usual to aviewfromtheoutside@hornmail.com. We also invite you to visit and like our Facebook page, A View from the Outside, and also visit and subscribe to our YouTube channel at JMB Horne. Everyone have a pleasant Saturday, have a wonderful Sunday, and a productive week ahead when you all continue to observe all the protocols, including wearing masks and social distancing. All the best to you and the listeners, Randy.